To know for sure that your child is in the right car seat for their age and size, visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat.
Cool. Very cool.
Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
It's important to plan ahead for emergencies, like the storm. When it kicked in, we had a plan.
Separated.
We were able to get in touch with each other in no time.
Idea how to find each other.
The whole experience was fine.
The most frightening 10 hours of my life.
If there's one piece of advice I'd offer other moms out there, it's to stay calm and keep to the plan.
Some parents plan ahead, some don't. Make sure you know where to find your family in an emergency. Start your plan at ready.gov. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Ladies and gentlemen,
you know what time it is.
Grab some lunch and let's talk business with Cheryl Cuso every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m.
This is how it should be done.
Listen in on In Touch Radio.
The Storks are bringing me a baby brother. We can do this together.
All right, let's go.
Storks know how to keep kids safe. Do you?
But
oh my gosh, you don't know.
I know.
You don't. Oh man, you laugh when you're uncomfortable.
No.
Making sure your child is in the right car seat is one of the steps to safer travel.
I will rock this.
You will rock this.
To know for sure that your child is in the right car seat for their age and size, visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat.
Cool. Very cool.
Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
It's important to plan ahead for emergencies, like the storm. When it kicked in, we had a plan.
Separated.
We were able to get in touch with each other in no time.
Idea how to find each other.
The whole experience was fine.
The most frightening 10 hours of my life.
If there's one piece of advice I'd offer other moms out there, it's to stay calm and keep to the plan.
Some parents plan ahead, some don't. Make sure you know where to find your family in an emergency. Start your plan at ready.gov. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Wherever we go, we about to bring on the positive vibe. Wherever we go, we are gonna do what makes us feel right. I'm just getting off the train.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and I would say us usually because right to my left would be my lovely co-host Monica, but she is not here today, and for good reason. So Keith is solo today. This is going to be a very unique show, a very special show. My whole set has changed around me because, as you can see, it's really a black and gold takeover. So Monica allowed me to have the mic all by myself today. So I'm gonna try to behave. I'm not really gonna behave. I'm gonna tell you that right now. But thank you guys for tuning in. This is the Sole Purpose Show. I'm your host Keith, and today we're gonna be talking about an issue that is very near and dear to me, and that is a challenge that Black men face, especially in this day and age around brotherhood. But first, I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to our guests from last month. You know, last month was a very special month. Last month, the month of November, is actually National Adoption Awareness Month. And Monica and I have been very open about our struggle and about our journey that culminated in the adoption of a beautiful young Black baby boy. And so we dedicated a whole month to just bringing more awareness of that to the public. And we had some outstanding guests on. So I encourage you, go to our Facebook page, go to our YouTube page if you haven't had a chance to see and hear and get some of that great content. By all means, do that. But for today, let's pivot to a subject that I know is going to resonate with those of us who have been, especially those of us who have been following the election, and that is brotherhood. And what does brotherhood have to do with the election? Well, something happened that was historic, and that is, for the first time in the history of this country, we actually nominated to the top of the ticket Vice President-elect Senator Kamala Harris, who was very public about her affiliation or background, not just attending a historically Black college and university, but being a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. And so now the general public, or the majority public, is now asking questions around, what is a Black Greek letter organization? What is the significance of a sorority? So with that, I wanted to have this show really dedicated, and I think it's very timely because for those of you who have been, maybe sleeping under a rock, you may not be aware of what happened yesterday. December 4th is the annual, or the anniversary, I should say, of the commemoration of thousands of young or thousands of college-educated men around the country and around the world commemorate the anniversary of the formation of the first Black Greek letter fraternal organization that started on a college campus. And that year was 1906. That fraternity, I should say, that college was Cornell University in Ithaca, New York. And that fraternity was none other than Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And what happened after that, in the days and the months and the years and the decades following that year, 1906, would forever change, and some would say really just shape the definition of brotherhood amongst Black men for decades to come. So today we're going to explore some really tougher questions around fraternity, like how relevant are fraternities and sororities today, right? And how much are fraternities actually contributing to the whole concept of brotherhood, not just within, like amongst our own ranks, but even outside of the fraternity. So I would love to consider myself an expert on this subject because I think I'm pretty smart. But joining me, I put together a team of brothers that I'm going to ask to go ahead and unmute yourselves that are going to explore some of these questions as well. So joining me today are a very esteemed panel of members of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. I'm pleased to have Florida A&M University College of Law Professor Reggie Mitchell, current president of Gamma Zeta Lambda, which is the Tampa alumni chapter of our fraternity, our brother Kasim Mabry, and then former president of that same chapter, and then my own brother from the same mother, Brother Howard A. Harris III. Brothers, how y'all feeling today?
That's fine. Thanks for having me.
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Outstanding, outstanding. I want to give each of you guys an opportunity to introduce yourselves and tell our viewers a little bit more about who you are. I think it would be only appropriate to start with Brother Mitchell. We're certainly not going to spend a whole lot of time just kind of going through our entire list of accolades, because starting with Brother Mitchell, if he started, like the rest of us wouldn't even get an opportunity to say anything. So, but we want you to have an opportunity to tell our viewers who you are and what you're doing and how you became affiliated with this great fraternity.
Good morning. I am a spring 1985 initiate of the Beta Nu chapter at Florida A&M University. I am currently the director of academic success at the FAMU College of Law, and I'm an active member of the Delta Xi Lambda chapter in Orlando, Florida.
Outstanding. Well, thank you, Brother Mitchell. We want to ask you a little bit more about some of the work that you've historically done on the social justice front as well. But for now, I want to pivot to a very dynamic young brother who may be able to hang with us for the whole show, for the whole hour. We hope so. But he's going to tell us a little about his current journey as president of our alumni chapter. Brother Mabry, how's it going today, man?
Doing well. Thank you for having me, Brother Harris. I am a spring 14 initiate of the Gamma Zeta Lambda chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity here in Tampa, Florida. And it's my current pleasure to serve as the chapter president, leading the great brothers in our city. So thank you, Brother Harris, for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Outstanding, outstanding. And then last but certainly not least is our senior statesman. And when I say senior, I mean he's just older than everybody else. That's all it is. He's been a member of our great our fine fraternity for many years. Brother Harris, tell our viewers a little bit more about who you are and where you come
from. A 1979 initiate of Beta chapter, and that is at Howard University. I know that I am outnumbered today by Rattlers, but understand that the Bison are in control today.
What is a bison? What is that?
Buffalo.
Howard University Bison.
Buffalo.
You better recognize this year because we are on the map in ways that we have never been on the map before.
Truly.
And so from vice president on down, we're doing the damn thing.
All right.
So I've been in the fraternity now for 41 years. And I was, as you mentioned, former president of Gamma Zeta Lambda chapter. And currently, though I am employed by Hillsborough County government, I also am co-director of the city of Tampa's Martin Luther King Day Parade. So we may have a word or two about that later on, but that's my story. And I am your older brother and smarter and cuter by miles.
There you go. There you go. And see now, and that's how it starts.
Yeah.
And that's probably a good, and that's a good segue, bro. So, Brother Mabry, obviously, as chapter president, you have the distinct honor of having to convene a group of brothers that are not unlike my older brother. We all think we're smart. We all think we're cute. I mean, tell us about how much of a challenge that is, really, just in kind of corralling all those different personalities and all of that kind of Black excellence in one room.
Thank you, Brother Harris. It's I think less of a challenge than most would presume. Just given the nature of the fraternity, and so I could talk a little bit about the reasons, why I've taken that challenge, and that's essentially because I'm passionate about the ideals of the fraternity, and I have the personal life experiences that I've benefited from as a result of the work of Alpha men in the community. I think Alpha, it really kind of essentially changed my life for the better, even as a younger man, going through high school and participating in the mentoring programs that were offered by the local chapters in Savannah, Georgia, which is my hometown. And so I have a twin brother, actually, and he and I were raised in a single parent home and had limited means, but the Alpha men in the city really helped to fill the voids of having male role models and leaders, both in my life and in the community. And so with their help and through the implementation of like that local chapters, go to high school, go to college programming and mentoring, it helped me to create a vision for my life that was larger than the experiences I had. And that's really I think the root of the passion that I have around being a member of this fraternity, serving as a brother, and ultimately serving as the president of the chapter here in Tampa.
That's outstanding, and we know it's not hard, and you have to. If you don't have that passion, sometimes it's going to be challenging because you got again a room full of college educated brothers that all have their own ideas and their own opinions about things, and you have to be able to really just kind of corral those and be brotherly at the same time. Brother Mitchell, now you came through the Beta Nu chapter at FAMU. I'm not sure a lot of our audience knows the significance of the Beta Nu chapter to the fraternity as a whole. Would you share some of that with us?
Yes, we have the privilege of having one of the founding members of our national organization, the Jewels, founded the Beta Nu chapter. So Charles Henry Chapman, he founded the Beta Nu chapter. He was a professor of agriculture at Florida A&M University. And so that's a lot of pressure when you have members like him, the founding of the chapter, alumni members like Dr. Humphreys and Moses General Miles and all of them, are members of the chapter. So it puts a little pressure on us to excel, just like the famous Beta chapter, right? So we know that we stand on the shoulders of giants, and so we felt the pressure to excel.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the Beta chapter, and obviously for those of you who follow the Greek letters, Alpha obviously would be first, and our Alpha chapter is the founding chapter of Cornell, and then right behind them is Beta chapter, which is at Howard University. And Brother Harris, I know that you have some history as well, having come through that chapter, having pride of ownership. So talk to us a little bit about that.
So, the Beta chapter was really the first foray into the expansion effort of the fraternity. And they felt it was really important that what they had created at Cornell be significant to the country, especially to Black America. And so Howard University was the first target because it was then, and I would say still, the leading Black institution. And they knew that expansion at Beta would give them the biggest bang for the buck in terms of significance for the fraternity on a national scale. And so it's always been that, even when Cornell University, the chapter there was inactive for periods of time, as you might imagine, difficult to maintain solid Black membership at an Ivy League school in the far reaches of New York State. Beta chapter has been there on a continuous basis since 1908. And of course, the membership there has been many of the Black leaders of this country, and still is today.
I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about, you talk about Black leaders, national leaders. You were actually on campus at Howard during a very interesting time in our country. So when you talk about the mid-70s, that's really on the heels of the whole Black Power movement. And I've seen the pictures of brothers on campus with the big afros, and it really kind of takes you to what was happening in that time period around the Black Power movement. So talk to us a little bit about what kind of influences you had on campus at Howard.
Yeah, I think I was blessed to be on that campus in the late 70s on the heels of the Black Power movement. And it was a very interesting dynamic on campus. Howard had always been in the forefront in one way or another of the whole Black Power movement, the intellectual capital that movement took advantage of. A lot of that was coming out of places like Howard. And at the same time, Howard was considered one of those places where the Black intelligentsia would be trained to take its place in corporate society. So there was this pull and tug between, hey, Black Power, and what are you doing for the struggle, and how are you remaining relevant to what's happening for Black people in this country on the heels of the Black Power movement, the people like the Last Poets, and all of the revolutionary thought that was going on at that time. And shouldn't we be turning our attention to taking our place in American corporate society and being a part of all of the venerable American institutions? And so I pledged at a time when that question was front and center. And I can remember hearing whispers from people sometimes when we would be gathered. Oh, you guys are, you're not Greek. You're not relevant. You're not, what are you doing for the struggle? And, it kind of hit home in some cases. But what we had to kind of build on then, as I think now, our fraternity has always needed all the soldiers. And the Black Power movement and Black empowerment in this country has always needed all the soldiers. And so you had Martin Luther King out there, our brother Martin Luther King, who was an organizer, grassroots organizer, and spiritual leader. And you had the marches and the young brothers who were on the ground, in marches and getting water hoses turned on them and getting beaten and going to jail. And really being the blunt force instrument for Black empowerment. And then you had a team of lawyers and businessmen surrounding Dr. King, many of them, probably most of them alphas, who were on that side of the struggle, dismantling the legal system of oppression and providing money to some of these efforts that needed money for the struggle to continue. And so, yeah, we Howard was an elite organization, and you had these people who might be considered from the elite side of the tracks, but you needed those brothers as well as you needed the brothers who were on the ground fighting. So that's how we justified our existence then. We've always had people who took the mantle of leadership for the fight. And sometimes that means you're wearing a dashiki, and sometimes that means you're wearing a suit. And so that's how we always reconcile that dynamic.
It's good stuff, man. It actually puts me in the mind of like a decade or so later. I found myself on the campus of Florida A&M University in Tallahassee, under the leadership of student government president, who happened to be Brother Mitchell, and I was actually in his cabinet. So I know we've touched on social justice, in the late 70s, but now let's fast forward to the late 80s. And Brother Mitchell, I was able to dig up an old FAMU article, which is the school newspaper, student newspaper, about some of your antics while you were SGA
Good
president.
antics, right?
Tell our viewers about what that was all about.
Well, as your brother was talking, I was reminded that the people that inspired me, I was forced to do a lot of reading in high school. And I was reading about Martin Luther King, about Thurgood Marshall, about Charles Hamilton Houston, Paul Robeson, and W.B. Du Bois, and the list goes on. And then later on in one of those books, it mentioned that they were members of this fraternity, and it said Phi Alpha Fraternity. So in my junior year, the first time hearing about it, they started, the SGA president would come from FAMU to FAMU High, where I was educated, and they called it Phi Alpha Scholarship Fraternity. So I thought, my dad was a smart guy. He was an athlete. Maybe I'll join this fraternity and they'll make me smart, right? And I can do cool stuff still, right? So I got to FAMU, and those guys in civil rights inspired me. We were HBCU, so I just kept up the tradition. I mean, it's an ancient African tradition to be involved in marching and all of that stuff. And so I was on stage and I said, we haven't honored Martin Luther King yet. So he was a brother. We gonna make this the first Black holiday. So I encouraged students, and the president of the university was an Alpha. So I had to diplomatically say, y'all skip class, but teachers, y'all don't mark them absent, right? Let's be nice about it. So we marched for the Martin Luther King holiday, and I learned to lobby in the legislature. We marched against South African apartheid with Randall Robinson. We marched for higher education. So there were a lot of causes that naturally came to a Black college, and I just thought it was a natural extension of what we did.
Yeah, that's good stuff. And I want to talk a little bit later in the show about our roles in social justice, and especially with respect to the Black males role as leaders in that movement. But I want to pivot right now to Brother Mabry. We really I launched this show to talk about brotherhood, and I think that between your predecessors as chapter presidents and yourself, you guys have done an outstanding job of not just kind of leading the fraternity, but also leading with an underscore and an undercurrent of what brotherhood really is all about. So tell our viewers some of the things that you have kept on, traditions that you kept on, and maybe that you've also created since you've taken over to continue that mantle of brotherhood amongst the chapter brothers.
Right. Yeah, I think it's important to understand kind of that the core of our fraternity is brotherhood, and it's the backbone of all of the work we do within our communities, and what we do relies on the strength of the brotherhood bond that we have as a fraternity. And so when you kind of look at how the fraternity was founded, it was founded on the concept of brotherhood. It was initially started out as a social support group, social study and support group for minority men who faced racial prejudice, both educationally and socially, at Cornell University in 1906. And those young men, of whom we refer to now as our jewels, they recognized that need to help correct those educational and economic and political and social injustices faced by African Americans. And so since its founding, our fraternity has supplied kind of that voice and vision to the struggle of African Americans and people of color around the world. And so, given all the historical context of that time, being not too far removed from the abolishment of slavery and the work that they sought out to do, it was very challenging. And it took more than just, a vision and a willingness to kind of work towards affecting that change. And what was really required was a support system that had a foundation that couldn't be broken. And that's what I think was the start of the strength of the Brotherhood. And, we here in Tampa, we're blessed to have the largest chapter in the state of Florida, with almost 150 active brothers within our chapter. And what that means is we really have a unique opportunity to cater Brotherhood activities and initiatives that reflect the size and the diversity of the different interests and demographics of our chapter. We just closed off, we'll close off to this afternoon, this evening, our Brotherhood Week, which started started actually last Saturday, which included a week of programming that really did just that, focus on Brotherhood. And one of the objectives of our fraternity is to develop our members and centered around Brotherhood. So we started off with motivational and empowering lecture series. We had a panel for My Brother's Keeper, a Bible study, as well as social activities, all of which really focused on the foundation of our Brotherhood and developing our brothers.
Yeah, and I can attest to a lot of those activities because coming into that same chapter some years back, I want to say we probably had maybe 35 to 40 active brothers in the chapter. Probably 15 or 20 of us, kind of were the most active, but in terms of dues paying, and just to see the work that has been put in from the leadership on down, I will tell you that what's grown that chapter as significantly as it has are things like Brotherhood Smoke, where brothers just get together and go grab a cigar and a bourbon and just kind of fellowship. You mentioned my brother's keeper. I mean, programs where brothers will actually go and help senior brothers who may not have the ability to get around as much as or as easy as they used to, and go to their homes and help them out with activities in the home. So we honor the alpha widows even from brothers who have left their spouses here and gone on to the Omega chapter, and we actually send brothers out to those homes from time to time. So yeah, I think you guys have done a fantastic job of really just kind of keeping the mantle of Brotherhood alive as well. I want to, and I know we have to go to break here in a little bit, but I want to ask you guys real quick. Hey, all of that Brotherhood on campus, college days, partying and that kind of stuff. Does that end at graduation? Or Reggie, are you still in contact with your Beta Nu brothers from campus?
I certainly am. All my line brothers were invited to my wedding. And, the thing about, I learned in a history book that the reason they created alumni chapters so that all that education that we get at the undergraduate level and all the talents we learn and experience, we use that in the graduate chapter for the betterment of this country. And so we learn as undergrads national projects that we have to work on, and that we're just in the habit of doing it. Afterwards, we still can participate. It's not just parties anymore, but it's been community service projects, educational projects. And so if the undergrads created go to high school, go to college, and a voteless people is a hopeless people, people like Martin Luther King, Thurgood Marshall, Charles Hamilton, Houston, at the graduate level, they can use their expertise to spread it across the country. And so when we are Greeks United for Kamala Harris, that's just an extension of what we do, because we were taught that as undergrads.
Outstanding. And Brother Harris, I know it's been a couple of years for you since college days, but those days swift. Are you still in contact with some of the brothers from way back in the early 1900s when you were?
Yeah, in the 1900s. Yeah. I absolutely have to tell this story. I pledged on a line of 17, and 15 of us are still alive. Unfortunately, 2 passed on. But about 5 years ago, the wife of one of my line brothers called another line brother to say, hey, Courtney's not feeling well. He was a doctor, but he was suffering from diabetes. And those ills were starting to really kind of kick up and take over and bring him down. So he was depressed. And she said, I think if a couple of you guys came out and visited him, it would lift his spirits. And that call went out, and about 6 of us flew, and they live in Oklahoma City, so nobody else is in Oklahoma City. So about 6 of us flew from where we were in our parts of the country to Oklahoma City to visit our line brother who was depressed about his diabetes symptoms and how life was going now that he was physically declining. And it did the thing that it needed to do. It lifted his spirits, gave him a spirit to fight on. And that was 5 years ago. And we decided to continue that tradition. And the call has gone out every year until last year. Of the 15 living members of my line from 1979, 13 of us showed up in Oklahoma City to get together and just reminisce and lift Courtney's spirits and continue to be the brothers that we were in 1979. And you know, the oddest thing is when you sit across the table, we're all 60 plus now in years. We're talking about grandkids now, and we're talking about all that we've gone through in our lives. But I still see that same 19-year-old that I was pledging with. You know, the gray hair is there, the pot bellies are there, but I still see that 19-year-old that I pledged with. And it's just love, man. It's love that drew us to Oklahoma City here some 40 years later. And it's love that keeps us going.
That's a great story, man. When we
Keith,
come,
I got a quick story that
hang on to that. When we come back from break, we're going to talk more about our brotherhood stories, and we're going to shift a little bit, talk about social justice as well. So we'll be right back right after our break. Go ahead and mute your lines.
Sean from the line said I better be ready by 9 for the party that's on Fulton Street.
In Touch Radio, where you can listen to a cruising flow of smooth soul and jazz, today's R&B, a fun touch of hip hop and gospel.
All my music on one station.
Giving you a buffet of music, news, and entertainment. We're In Touch Radio.
It's politics. It's life. It's the Life Malcolm Show every Tuesday at 6 p.m. on In Touch Radio.
This is Mario Andretti. You know me as a race car driver, but I'm also a Meals on Wheels volunteer. I've raced against the sport's biggest personalities, but I've never met more vibrant, amazing people than the seniors served by Meals on Wheels. You can make a difference by dropping off a hot meal and saying a quick hello. So, America, let's do lunch. Volunteer your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
This message brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
People been saying to your friend, get a different face, and posting on their feed, they're super ugly. The things they say to them online are cruel and they're not true. So tell your friend, I'll stand up for you. Don't worry, I know what to do.
Know someone being bullied online? You can be a witness and make a difference by letting the world know it isn't cool and by letting your friend know you care. Learn more at eyewitnessbullying.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
By now, we're all aware of the dangers of COVID-19. Like others with existing health issues, cancer patients are at a high risk due to their compromised condition. If you are newly diagnosed with cancer, your care likely can't wait. Moffitt Cancer Center is the best place for your cancer concerns and to provide guidance to help you plan your next steps. We're here for you. Call 1-888-456-2839 or go to moffitt.org/here for you.
Wherever we go, we about to bring on the positive vibe.
All right. Welcome back, everyone, to the Soul Purpose Show. I'm your host, Keith. Before we went to break, we started talking about the significance of the brotherhood amongst the brotherhood. We're not just, Black Greek fraternities are not just about partying. Obviously, we're about social justice and social change. And we do have a lot of fun together. But at the core of what makes us special and makes our organization special is the bonds that we have amongst one another. So, Brother Mitchell, I think you wanted to share a story on the heels of Brother Harris's story back when the old farts got together.
Right. Similarly, when I graduated, Dr. Humphreys had bought the fraternity house from Reverend Miles because ours was torn down where the Frederick Humphreys building is. So we started the Housing Foundation, and I stayed in touch with some of my line brothers, but we sort of fell out of touch. But 2 years ago, I suffered a stroke, and while I was recovering, I'm pretty much fully recovered. Another line brother was battling cancer, right? So he gives me a call in like November or so, and I'm like, I don't care what I'm doing. We decided we were going to stop what we're doing and go see him because you don't know when this is the last time we get to see him. And 10 out of 12 of us showed up in Indiana at his house. Wow. And it was like, you remember the movie The Big Chill? It was like The Big Chill, right? We were just having a great time and being kids again. We felt like we were 20 years old again. So we've kind of pledged to stay in touch and have monthly meetings. And I got remarried and invited all of them I had to make room to invite them to my wedding. So I had to kick some people out of my wedding. And we've been staying in touch ever since. And so, as you get older, you start remembering that some of the most important people in your life are brothers. And then my son surprised me at my wedding my youngest son, to tell me he was going to pledge Alpha Phi Alpha. Nice. And my line brother and my other, one of my closest brothers, David Jefferson, he was in the year after me. They just pulled out $1,000 in cash and handed it to my son and said, use this to apply. And, I paid them back, but that's just the kind of love and spirit that we have, that if they call me at 3 a.m, I'm just like, whose body we got to bury, what we got to do. Because, whatever you need, whatever you want, that's how you feel about that they truly are like your brothers or even closer than your actual brothers at times.
That's outstanding, man. I want to ask and I want to share with our audience what we do, not just internally as brothers, but also what we do to extend ourselves outside of the fraternity. Brother Mabry, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about mentoring. One of the key programs that we've initiated is around mentoring, and that really is an indication of us taking that same spirit of brotherhood outside of ourselves.
Definitely. Our chapter currently implements our National Fraternities program called Go to High School, Go to College program. And our implementation of that is branded as the Men of Tomorrow. And that program specifically has been running for about 30 years. I believe it started in the 80s. It focuses on mentoring our young men to prepare them to be successful throughout their high school tenure, middle school and high school tenure, in order to best provide them a successful foundation to go to college. Right now, we have approximately 30 mentees in our program, where we, on a regular basis, meet with them and mentor them over a range of topics, including, it goes from basic life skills, how to tie a tie, relationships, through academic mentoring, where we go through standardized test preparation and other subjects. So we have a very strong program, and those relationships that we build with those young men, they kind of go beyond even our engagement with them after they graduate high school and go into college. We maintain contact with them, throughout even their collegiate careers. So this past year, we even extended our scholarship offerings to some of our graduates who moved on to go to universities like Florida A&M University and Tuskegee University. So we definitely have a strong program. And this year particularly has been interesting given the pandemic. with the support that that they need and what we're providing to them, even as we move to a virtual environment. Typically we'd be in a classroom setting, having physical interactions, being able to see them in person. And so that's changed. And we've had to transition to a virtual format. Likewise, our fundraising efforts to support the program has had to change. Usually we would have a very large gala where we'd raise money. And so actually this year we are taking on an initiative where we're doing a virtual concert, which actually airs this evening to celebrate our chapter's 75th anniversary, but primarily to support and fund our mentoring program so that we're able to provide and extend our offering virtually and continue to provide that value for our young men.
That's outstanding. And you mentioned the mentoring program, the Men of Tomorrow program. That concert actually features a very special now brother
Yes.
of our fraternity, BK Jackson, who came from that mentoring program and is now an Alpha brother. And one unique fact about him is as a kid, you may as well say, not even out of college yet, had a unique opportunity to tour with Prince before he passed. And was a part of Prince's band, traveling all around the world. So we're super, super proud of BK. And to say, and he's recorded, CDs, and he's one of the, I think he was Smooth Jazz's, top new artist a year or so ago. So we encourage everyone to follow up. Now, how can our listening audience tune into that concert?
Yes, so the concert will be aired virtually, live, of course, on both Facebook and YouTube platforms. I'd encourage anyone listening to just go to the Tampa Alpha's Facebook. You'll find some of our promotional material about how to connect, and you can go there to see the video that will be shared streaming live from BK's social platforms.
Outstanding. We'll be sure to tune into that. Brother Harris, along those same lines of us reaching and extending outside of our fraternal bonds into the community, you also lead one of our community initiatives as well. Honor Dr. King. Tell our audience about that.
Yeah, the MLK parade. Obviously, the world celebrates Dr. Martin Luther King, but in our case, of course, I couldn't have that effort continue in the city of Tampa without Alpha being a part of it in some way, shape, or form. So I co-direct that parade. As you might imagine, the pandemic has put parades in a different kind of light. Gasparilla and all the other major parades in the city have adjusted what they're doing and postponed their activities until later in the year. And we are doing the same thing. We'll have an announcement coming out very shortly about the postponed date for the MLK parade. And but we're still having that parade. We're still making sure that we honor Dr. King and all his what he means to this country and what he means to our community specifically. The parade winds its way through East Tampa, which is predominantly Black part of our town, even though it is getting more and more diverse by the day, which is of course what Dr. King was all about. Tolerance and openness to everyone. And so that parade will be coming. Stay tuned for the announcements. We have to get some things nailed down with the city first, but that'll be happening soon. And it's just been a wonderful opportunity for us, not only as a nonprofit, to grow and make the parade bigger than it was ever envisioned. Last year was the biggest. We had 3 college bands and 3 horse units and so forth and so on. But those businesses need that exposure. The businesses that participate in the parade, all the community groups benefit from the exposure of being in the parade. So it's not just a one-day event. It's the biggest event that occurs on that side of town. And there's lasting benefit to the folks who are in that parade. And we actually do a lot of community service initiatives in conjunction with the groups who appear in those in that parade. So stay tuned. It's something that we're proud of. And of course, our brother, Dr. King, is the primary reason we do it.
Well, and that's a good segue to I want to chat a little bit about some of the things that Dr. King stood for. Here we are, 50 plus years later, still marching for our rights. And I think that 2020 is going to be a historic year for a number of reasons. Brother Mitchell talked about, back when he was a student, carrying on the tradition of kind of the great civil rights leaders and staging a boycott. He told us not to go to class. He was boycott class. That's what it was. But as radical as that might sound, we are still living in a very tenuous time. And Brother Mitchell, I know you have a unique perspective being an attorney, but we've had a wave of incidences that have happened that are still challenging our ability to stand up for our civil rights. And what's different now than back, during the civil rights movement, or maybe it's the same, is that we see the folks out on the forefront of that protest being, young white college students in a lot of cases, the Black Lives Matter movement, which is not necessarily Black folks all the time, students and LGBTQ advocates and kind of a mix of folks out there. Where's Alpha during this, during this protest? Where are we in the struggle?
I think you already alluded to it. What used to occur is still occurring. Alphas were at the forefront of many of these marches. I've seen specials where the leader of one of the marches happened to be an Phi Alpha member. And so it is nothing new that they started out with nonviolence, and sometimes it turns into violence. That's the same thing that happened after the assassination of Martin Luther King. And so those things are still occurring. Many of us are programmed to do these kind of things. I mean, the education of Black people don't know that it was Phi Alpha, that the history of Phi Alpha is the history of Black education. So Charles Hamilton Houston, former dean of Howard Law, former Harvard Law editor, Law Review, he started the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, right? And so they desegregated the University of Maryland, the school that tried to keep Thurgood Marshall out, and Phi Alpha paid the legal fees and paid for that student, Donald Murray, who was a Kappa, to go to school. And then they desegregated the University of Missouri, and it was a brother, Donald Gaines, was a member of Phi Alpha Fraternity, that once again, the lawyers for that case were Alphas. The Alphas paid for the legal fees. Belford Lawson was a national president. He desegregated a lot of cases. And so they went from place to place to make sure you could desegregate law schools and professional schools, eventually graduate schools, and then eventually K through 12. And so the history of Alpha is the history of Black legal education. And so these marches that are going on now, the George Floyd incident was kind of like the final straw where we just could not take it anymore. And just like in the 60s and the 50s, white Americans were marching and dying for our cause. The same thing is occurring now that's going on right now. So it's almost like a rebirth of some of the same things that have been going on. What's shocking is that in 2020, the same things are happening. I think that's the only thing that's different about it, that we would have thought by 2020, this stuff just couldn't be happening with the rights that we've come to expect and are used to, and we're finding out they're not there all the time.
Yeah, and it's interesting, we talk about that historical perspective, for those of us who are a little older, and I know Brother Mabry, I know you kind of came in really kind of on the heels of some of the struggles that we were, referred to back in the, back in the 80s, 70s, and 80s. But you take over as chapter president of a chapter during probably one of the toughest times of our recent history. So talk to our viewers a little bit about kind of what some of the efforts that you involved the chapter in on the wake of the protests.
Sure. One of the primary objectives of the fraternity that our chapter works to accomplish is to provide a level of advocacy for our communities. that is supported, and it really supported by the foundation where we kind of have been talking about brotherhood. And so, even Alpha has kind of long stood on at the forefront of a lot of issues within the African American communities, fight for civil rights through leaders. We talk about MLK, W.E.B. Du Bois, Adam Clayton Powell, and so we have those examples as a chapter to look at, and we truly stand on their shoulders. When I was essentially voted into the presidency of the chapter, it was, as you mentioned, kind of almost to the peak of the protests and the Black Lives Matter movement. One of the first things that we did was organize around Juneteenth with the theme peace, justice, and reform. And our chapter organized that with community leaders and organizations, as well as our city leaders with the mayor and the police chief, to organize a march where we pushed for those three things. Peace. We wanted everyone to know that this march was not something that we wanted to be viewed as a riot or anything negative like that. This was a peaceful march that we organized. We wanted the focus on justice, the justice of all of those, this list of names that are way too long, right? George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, all of these names. We wanted justice for those individuals, as well as reform. So we presented our city leaders a list of reform and actionable items that they could take to implement as a first step in ensuring that here in Tampa, we're doing the right things to support our community, and that we are promoting the rights that we expect for those in the community. And that's just one of the ways that we had started we really continued our advocacy efforts. And so even beyond that, we have engaged our police chief in coordination with the NPHC to have meetings around status of those action items that came out of that march, as well as the continued engagement with our mayor and others to ensure that they're getting feedback from us as community leaders to address issues and the concerns of our community.
Outstanding. I tell you, it's it is a shame that in 2020 we're still having these conversations, and obviously, we've shared our political views on this show, and it's not a show about politics, but I think that the recent election of Senator Harris to the vice presidency, caused some to start asking questions around our support as Black men for her, and our support as Black men in general, as we start aligning ourselves politically. Some of us, kind of to the Republican Party as well, and to stand for things that may not necessarily align with our broader views. So I think I think we've made some pretty strong statements with the way we showed up and showed out, and continue to do, and quite frankly need to continue to do with our with the remaining Senate elections going on in Georgia right now. So anyway, so take that for what it's worth. I know that we've got a few minutes left. What I wanted to see if I can do is to ask you brothers to reflect on your time as alphas. Some of you have shared some really poignant stories already, but reflect on your time as alphas, and maybe give our audience what you would consider kind of a brotherhood moment, like one of those things that made you know, hey, look, this thing is really really less about, just kind of partying and having a good time, than it is about a true brotherhood, a true fraternity. So, Brother Harris, do you have anything that sticks out to you?
Well, I hate to keep going so far back in the historical vault, but a lot of those things that were most significant to me happened in those early days of my being in the fraternity. And I'd have to say that one that sticks with me forever is as it relates to brotherhood. When we were initiated, my line was initiated, the chapter, Beta chapter, was very excited that to have this infusion of 17 new brothers into the chapter and all that meant. And of course, Beta chapter was then as now very active in any number of activities on campus and around campus. The very first chapter meeting that I attended, that my line brothers and I attended, we were so excited to be there, so excited to be part of the Brotherhood. And in that meeting, make a long story short, a fight broke out. We had two brothers who were each very passionate about initiatives that they wanted to see the chapter take on. One was socially very much a socially relevant project, and the other was a fundraiser. And the energy of the chapter, we felt, not a problem. We can handle both those. But these brothers were so passionate about what they were doing that they got into a bit of an argument. And that argument escalated to the point where they were about ready to go to blows. And the brothers, sort of separated them. And of course, when we saw that, us brand new alphas, seeing that there was such a heated disagreement, it was a shock. We're supposed to be brothers. We're supposed to love each other. We're not supposed to have, this kind of an intense disagreement. And when those brothers, when we separated those brothers, they voluntarily went outside into the hallway, and they were out there for 5 or 10 minutes. We didn't hear from them. We tried to go along with the business of the meeting, but of course, especially those of us who were brand new, obviously we were distracted, thinking about what had just happened. 10 minutes go by, these brothers come back into the meeting. They turn to us, they apologized to us for their behavior. They turned to each other and embraced. And for me, that was the most significant display of what happens when you have brothers who are passionate about what they do, passionate about their respective views of how things should go in the world. But at the end of the day, they're brothers. And for me, that was the most significant. And I can tell you that alphas disagree. I've been around the country. I've been sitting in meetings where people have intense disagreements. Leaders, when you got a bunch of leaders together, they're always going to be a disagreement about something. But at the end of the day, it's the brotherhood that keeps us strong.
Yeah, I love that story, man. And I'm sure we all have similar stories of passionate meetings where brothers were, having spirited discussions and spirited disagreements. And I know we only have a minute or so left, Brother Mitchell. I'll give you opportunity if you have any stories, similar stories that you'd like to share with our audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of joked offline that, I had to up my argument game and learn Robert Rules of Order, because you got all these smart guys that are like-minded just like you, but may disagree. You got to get to an end game, because you can pontificate on in, but you got to find how to get results. And Alpha taught me that. And my inception into Alpha, when I was online, Alpha made sure that I got elected SGA president. So my campaign manager was the chapter president. And then when I became chapter president, we're having frat night and I'm thinking about what my next job opportunity is going to be. I decided to create the pre-law program at a frat night meeting in the frat house, arguing about religion and every other subject. And we came up with the idea of a pre-law program. And I had to convince my boss was the university president was an Alpha, and the department chair where I was going to work was an Alpha. So they taught me everything about management and leadership and organizational skills. That's what Alpha was all about. So it's easy to have a party, but the hard work begins once you cross, not just the parties, but everything else. And so at conventions and everywhere else, I learned it's not just about, we're not one dimensional. We're Renaissance men like our brother Paul Robeson. And so we try to beat everybody in every sport and every social engagement and everything of serious matter and quality. So that's what Alpha taught me.
Outstanding. Well, I know we're out of time, and I got to tell you, I've got probably a dozen brotherhood stories myself, but my most recent one is this was something that was near and dear to me. I wanted to do this show. My wife gave me permission, and so I took advantage of it. I reached out to my chapter president, my former chapter president, and my FAMU brother, somebody who I looked up to. I was in his administration as SGA president when we were radicals on campus. And everybody said, sure, we'll do it. And that's the way Alphas respond. I really appreciate you, brothers. I ask you to stay safe, keep on that Alpha spirit, and
right. Happy Founders Day. Y'all have a great one.
Happy Founders Day, brothers.
All right, take care, y'all.
Right.
See y'all next week.
Yeah.
And we see nothing.